Good afternoon, everyone. I am Michael Brickhouse. I am the Director of Alumni Relations at Duke Divinity School, and I want to welcome you for this series of Wind in Our Sails, where we will be discussing the topic of friendship. I'm so honored and blessed to have with us the Reverend Dr. William Lee, who will be presenting this session on friendship. And we are grateful for all of you that have joined us to be a part of this ongoing series of Wind in Ourselves. Wind in Ourselves is seeking to help nourish those that are in ministry with uh, digital resources and engaging conversations around various topics that we encounter in ministerial life. And so today, our topic is friendship, and we have with us the Reverend Dr. William Lee, who is the pastor emeritus of the Lawton Avenue Christian Church in Roanoke, Virginia. He had the privilege and pleasure of serving that community for nearly 40 years. He is a graduate of Duke Divinity School, and he took his skills and his knowledge to the Roanoke community, where he was a pastor to the community. He didn't just stay in the four walls of the church, but he got out and helped establish a community health and wellness clinic, which now has become New Horizons Healthcare, which is still active today, serving the community. But that's not all he did. He also engaged in the topic that he is discussing today by developing friendships across the lines with his colleagues as well as with his parishioners. And so I am excited for this conversation with Dr. Lee. And Dr. Lee, how are you doing today?
Michael, I'm doing great, and good day to all who are viewing. Great day, great day.
And thank you again for being with us today. I'll open us up with a word of prayer, and immediately after the prayer, we're going to go ahead and begin with the video of your lecture. Let us pray. Gracious God, we are thankful for this day, and we're thankful for this time together as a community to discuss the wonderful ways that you have called us friends and called us to be in friendship, not only with one another, but with also with you. And so, Lord, I pray now for our time together. I pray that the words that will be shared will be sources of hope and strength for us in this season. And I pray, oh God, that this time will be a time of renewal for someone and spark within them the excitement of developing passionate and lifelong friendships. It's in Christ's name we pray and give thanks. Amen. Well, without further ado, I will play our video for today.
So let me say hello to all of you who are part of the Win in Our Sales cohort. My name is Bill Lee. What I want to endeavor to talk about today in relationship to our work together is friendship, how to develop relationships and friendships that over time will be part of that iron sharpening iron that will help us become better persons personally and professionally. In so doing, I needed a biblical base for our working time together. So I went back to take a look at the life of Jesus. Jesus teaches us quickly that ministry cannot be a solo affair. As a matter of fact, I would caution all of us, if we're doing solo ministry, to quickly make a pivot as quick as you can, because you're already beyond the danger zone. If you would note in the fourth gospel, John's gospel, in the 15th chapter, Jesus references in that farewell discourse to his disciples when he was talking about the vine and the vine dresser. Towards the end, he says, "See now, I've called you friend." It is the first time that I note in the biblical witness in the New Testament where he referenced them as friends. He said, "No longer are you servants, no longer are you merely followers, but you're actually my friends." And then he says something else that I think is quite revealing. He says, "You did not choose me, but I chose you. Suggesting to me that Jesus, early in his ministry, after his baptism, and maybe before, realized that he could not fulfill his work on earth by himself. So he endeavored to pull with him 12 men. But Luke helps us to understand not just 12 men, but there were women in that circle. But the key word here is that he chose them. This was not happenstance. It was not accidental. He was actually looking for persons to be part of his circle. If you look even more carefully at Jesus' choosing of friends and relationships, within that group, there were the big three, I called them, Peter, James, and John, where it appears to me that he had maybe a more intimate relationship with them. The Mount of Transfiguration, the time in the Garden of Gethsemane, having the big three with him in close proximity. He may indeed have spent some time with them apart from the others as he built relationships. I just sense that if you look at the New Testament and the life of Jesus, one discovers professionally that in order for him to be all that he needs to be and focus on the ministry at hand, he surrounded himself with persons who he deemed to be friends. And I lock here on professional. But you look again at the fourth gospel, the 14th chapter, he referenced that these friends were also maybe theological colleagues also. I raise that because when he is talking about leaving, Thomas is confused. Philip is confused. Thomas said, we don't know where you're going. Philip said, show us the Father, and that will suffice us. It suggests to me that he had had these kinds of theological interactions with them, clarifying who he was and what he was about. That's the professional side of Jesus and his friendships. But again, if you look at the New Testament, his relationship with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, I sense as being more personal. If you look at Luke's gospel, Luke references that Jesus is at their house eating. I think a lot of folk focus too much on the Mary-Martha encounter and exchange about Martha saying to Mary, tell my sister to get up and help me with these chores. But I think what needs to be focused is that Jesus was not at the house as a rabbi. He was not there as a pastoral counselor. He was not there in any official duty. He was literally there to let his hair down, have a glass of wine, kick back, and be Jesus, be off the clock, so to speak. You'll note also, I think this relationship has been built over years when Lazarus became critically ill. This is pre-cell phone, pre-email, pre-any kind of social media. But obviously, Jesus lets them know where he would be at different times. So they send a courier to the place where Jesus is. They said 3 miles away, but 3 miles in a time when there is no mass transportation, that's quite a distance. But they knew where he was. He had made it known where he was. And the way they reacted when he did not show up on time suggests to me that Jesus had cultivated a rather tight personal relationship with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And curiously for me, after the resurrection of Lazarus, you will find that they're throwing a dinner party, and there again is Jesus, again laid back, eating, glass of wine, shoes off, literally off the clock. Now, this is very special to Bill Lee because I have been told over and over the years, when do I turn it off? And I am one of those people who have a difficult time turning it off. So when I approach this work, just looking at the life of Jesus and who he surrounded himself with was extremely helpful for me to begin, even at this stage of my life, to keep reminding myself it's all right to get off the clock. It's all right to turn it off. It's all right to hit the red button and stop. You don't have to even be green and yellow. Yielding does not mean that you have stopped. So hit the red light, and Jesus did that on a regular basis. So with that foundational biblical piece, I've looked over the years at how I have pulled people around me and how that has made a difference in my life, both professionally and personally. But I have added to my biblical foundation something I have drawn from Howard Thurman in his book, Spiritual Disciplines, especially his chapter on commitment, where he says before one can make a commitment to anything, one needs to raise 3 questions and answer them. And Thurman suggests that you will not answer these questions in one sitting. It's a constant answering. One thing he says, you have to ask yourself, who are you? Number 2, what do you want? And 3, how do you propose to get it? And I have discovered over the years, as I have approached relationships and friendships, that I have needed to use these 3 questions because I'm looking at Jesus. He chose his relationships. And I believe that we all choose them, but we might not have a standard, an intentionality about it. And over the years, I have kept going back to Thurman's 3 questions as I have approached relationships. Let me tell you why. And I think it's crucial to all of you who are trying to build relationships and try to build friendships. If you are confused about who you are, can you imagine what it's going to be like trying to be in a relationship with somebody else? And that person themselves might very well be confused as to who they are. Let me see if I can make this a little clearer. When I got married 48 years ago, it dawned on me, I was 21 years old, my wife was 22. Actually, we both would have been 21 if we had gotten married on the scheduled date, but ended up getting married on her birthday, which made her a cougar. She was a tad bit older than me, just a few months. And just in case she listens to this, I want to clarify that. But she and I talked about what it was like. I still didn't really know who I was at 21. She didn't know who she was at 21. And now we were trying to figure out who we were together. It reminds me of Michelle Obama's Becoming. We were becoming, but we were becoming together, not yet really knowing who we were individually. And then, lo and behold, here comes the first child. I'm also pastoring. She has her career. We've got all of this stuff going on, and we're not really intentionally attending to figuring out who we are as individuals. And then you're bringing other people into your lives. So I want to suggest to all of us that we need to take as much intentional time as we can to figure out who in the world am I? And that's fluid, because who I was at 25 is not who I was at 35 nor 45, and certainly 3 months shy of my 70th birthday. I'm a different person. So I got to keep asking myself this question and answering this question as I engage in relationships and in friendships. In doing this, it helps me to bring myself to a central sense of self. Thurman uses the story of Legion as a way to help us. When Jesus asked him, "Who are you?" He said, "I don't know." And then somebody inside of him addressed the question, and he finally said, "I'm just so many people that I don't know who I am." I think that most of us, we might not have as many characters running around in our head. I'm not suggesting anybody is bipolar, schizophrenic. That is not my point here. I'm not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, but I am a living human document. And I can tell you that each of us need to work on our who-ness as we enter into relationships. As we work on that, then we got to be very clear, what do I want? What do I want in a relationship? What do I want in a friendship? I'll say a couple of more things about that in a minute. And then how do I propose to get it? What kind of energy, how much stamina, how much skin am I going to put in the game to build this relationship? Because I would clearly state to you that very few relationships are 50-50. They're always skewed. There are days when you'll do 90% of the work and your friend will do 10. You might edge or etch towards 60-40, but it'll always be off. But we got to decide, what do I want and how much am I willing to put in it? With that said, I've been looking at my relationships over the years. I look at my relationship with the late Lonnie Wilson. He was probably, undoubtedly, the first best friend I had in ministry. All of my early engagements and friendship and colleagues, I chose people who were older than me, who had been in ministry longer than me. Lonnie Wilson was 10 years older than me. Sadly, he died at age 49. But we had a great relationship. We met every Tuesday for breakfast. After breakfast, we made hospital rounds together. And then we spent at least an hour or two poring over scripture. Now, it's interesting, our relationship. Lonnie Wilson was not a college graduate. He was not a seminary graduate. But he knew more Bible than I would ever know. Here I was, fresh out of Duke Divinity School. And he used to say, "Hey, Duke." But he would know more Old Testament stories. He knew stuff I just didn't know. Now, he said, "Hey, Holmes, let me tell you something. You need to get into your Bible." And it was through him that I became a serious scripture reader and scripture studier. We made a pact. At least he made the pact. He said, "I want you to teach me everything you have learned at Duke, and I'm going to teach you everything I've learned about people." He said, "Now you're going to get the better of the deal." And he was absolutely right. He taught me how to do relationships. As a matter of fact, he helped me discover who I am, who I was. He saw things in my congregation that for some reason I could not see. It could have been my youth. It could have been my immaturity. It could very well have been my education, because you can't let that get in the way. But Lonnie Wilson was that friend and colleague every Tuesday that helped me discover who I am and really what did I want. He would say, "Lee, you got a bigger congregation than me. You got people more educated than mine. I got everyday people in my congregation. I've got welfare mothers, and I'm doing more than you." And he was absolutely correct, because he had learned relationship building, and he taught me how to do it. He also taught me how to deal with money in the life of a church and stewardship. I was a little embarrassed to ask people. He said, "Lee, they can't give it if you don't ask them." He taught me a lot. Because I was beginning to know who I was, then I knew what I needed from Lonnie Wilson. And it was a double relationship. It wasn't me having to pour all in. This was almost as close to 50-50 as you could get. It was a great relationship. Death took him way too soon. But I am grateful that I had him early in my ministry to help ground me and keep me from falling by the wayside. A second person was the late William Augustus Jones, who ironically did not live in Roanoke. He lived in Brooklyn, New York, who I met here at Duke Divinity School. There is a series called the Gardner C. Taylor Fall Lecture Series on Black Preaching. We had invited Gardner C. Taylor to come to do that inaugural lecture series because we had intended to name the series after him after he had done the first lecture. He couldn't come. But he said if he was not being presumptuous, he would recommend this fellow who, if he came, probably would make us forget Gardner C. Taylor. And William Augustus Jones showed up. I was his chauffeur. I was the person who looked after him in that 2.5 days he was here, and we became fast friends. It was through William Augustus Jones, long distance, that he kept pressing me about the business of preaching, how I needed to really work at the craft of preaching, the craft of sermon construction. But he also taught me the presence in the pulpit and to be very careful that I didn't get caught up in reading every line, look at the people, and all of that. Is that kind of friendship, long distance. But he was also part of my personal growth. He loved coming to Roanoke, so he would come and preach for me in revivals. Here's a man who probably commanded 5 to 10 times more money than I could ever afford to give him an honorarium, but he came about 9 consecutive years to preach for me. but it was the times that we spent together during the day and at night. My son is the reason why I'm raising Dr. Jones. When I was discussing it with him, doing this lecture, he said, Daddy, of all the people, you've got to mention Dr. Jones. My son remembers, because my son was very young, maybe 8 or 9 years old, when Dr. Jones came to the house one night to watch the NCAA tournament. And he said, Bill, we got to order some pizzas. And he said, y'all like pizza? And my son looked at him and said, is that the man that wrote the book? And he was enamored that a person of his stature would be sitting on the floor in our basement family room with 2 large Sicilian pizzas, playing with my kids and acting like a human being. Those pieces in my life have helped me, shaped me in friendship. Now, every one of my friendships and relationships require work, and it require honesty. Wilson would tell me things I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear. Bill Jones, I would pick him up at the airport, and he would say, what's wrong? I said, what are you talking about, what's wrong? You just got in the car. He said, every time I come to Roanoke, as soon as I get in the car, you go, Loudon Avenue, what? We doing this, doing that. He said, you haven't mentioned a word about Loudon Avenue. What's wrong? And that instance was I had hit that proverbial wall. I had been there about 25 years. I was trying to figure out what was my next move there. I wasn't planning to leave. I just had hit that flat line, I think John Killinger called it environmentalization. I never heard that word. He said, you can't see the forest for the trees. You're just lost in there. And that's where I was. And I never shall forget, Bill, so let's go up on Mill Mountain where the star is. And he had me to look down into the valley. He said, Lee, this is what you need to do. You need to get up out of the valley and look down. And that experience helped get me out of what was doldrums, helped me get out of flatlining. And here I was again at 25 years in ministry. I got a whole new set of energy out of persons being honest with me. A true friendship and relationship has to be built on honesty and integrity. We can't be lying to each other and playing games. We just got to be real. The final 2 pieces I want to lift up in this lecture are more recent. When I left Duke, we were told that you should not have close relationships within your congregation. Your relationship, especially your personal relationship, should be outside of that because it could get a little whacked up. That had not been my experience. My wife and I, our best friends, are Wanda and Miles King. They now live in Richmond, Virginia. They were members of Loudon Avenue for about 12 years before Miles was transferred to Alpharetta, Georgia, where he ended his career at UPS. And now they have relocated back to Wanda's home in Richmond. That was probably, it still is, the most blessed relationship personally that we have had in my 39 years of ministry. Wanda and Miles allow Dana and I, but especially me, to come out of character. I don't have to be Reverend anything when I'm with them. We vacation together. We go everywhere together. We practically do everything together. My birth home is 2 miles northeast of Richmond, so I have to drive through Richmond in order to go home. I don't get hotels when I go home. My wife and I were together. We stay with Miles and Wanda. That relationship, I hope this does not mess up the most blessed of you, because I'm about to say something that might, depend on how conservative you are, even though you went to Duke. Miles and Wanda and I and Dana, we go to Las Vegas together a lot. Now, some say, oh, y'all going to gamble. There's nothing wrong with the slot machine. That doesn't bother me. The blessing is we have found Las Vegas to be a place where there's so much for us to do. So this is what we do when we go, other than the folks thinking that you spend every minute sitting at some casino machine. My wife just found a rare book store there. I go there. Miles and I take a day, just the 2 of us. There's some days where Wanda and I go and Miles and Dana go. Then there are days that 4 of us go. There are times when all 4 of us eat. Sometimes it's 2 of us, whatever we choose to do, because our relationship is so rich, we can do things. I refer to Miles as Dana's boyfriend. We just have a relationship that's just real. I don't have to be on. I don't have to have my Bible with me. I don't have to be on my knees praying. I can be Bill Lee. We go home together. We stand on the dock and fish together. But there are those moments when if Miles sensed that, Wanda sensed that something is not quite right, as friends, Miles, okay, man, what's going on? You seem like you got a little stressed. Talk to me. And he is that one person with whom I don't have to hide anything. I am completely transparent with Miles King, 100%. And I think also he with me, and Wanda the same way. Miles has just come through having a knee replacement. We walked through that by phone. I had a meniscus tear. We walked through that by phone. If there's a death, this is what we do. It's just one of those things. I think every clergy person, if you're going to be all you should be, you need a Miles and Wanda King in your life, a kind of friendship that just is real. You can be off when you need to be off, but if you have to be in your clerical collar, you can, and that does not create any kind of issue. The second piece is a little longer, and I hope I don't go way past my time, but it's where I have been the last 20 years. I discovered that in friendships, if you don't deal with the what do you want piece and keep working with who you are, you can do great damage to relationships and friendships. So let me just be again, transparent. I would come home from a gathering. I have a bunch of ministers. We meet every other Tuesday at Shaker's Restaurant in Roanoke. We shoot the breeze. Now, I was invited into this group. I didn't start this group. That group was meeting long before I got in. And they'd establish what they do. They eat, they laugh and joke, talk junk, but for me, that was it. And I went for about 6 months and decided that I would offer something without saying I was going to offer something. I brought a paper that Dave Odom, the leadership center here, had written on leading through a fog. And I thought it'd be a great thing to talk about leadership at this time in the culture. And I could tell when I passed that paper that I had violated why that group was together. I discovered I had a need that they did not have. I had a need to do some academic exercise. I have a need to just be engaged in thought process. I just want to mess with my head at least 3 or 4 times a month. But that group was not interested in that. So I went home and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to stop going to that lunch. They just do nothing. All they want to do is just joke and laugh around. She's not holding. Did they ask you to change their mission, their scope? I said, no. She's not, baby, you got to make up your mind. That group was in place before you started. That's what they wanted to do. Either you're going to learn to live with that and find what you need with the other piece somewhere else. And lo and behold, I'm still in that group. I have not violated them again, though I do have my moments when I want to say, hey, have y'all read Tanisha Coates? Have you read Isabel Wilkerson? But that's me, and so I have to leave it alone. Because of that, the choosing of who I needed in my life over my next 15 to 20 years of ministry led me to Second Presbyterian Church and a fellow named George Anderson. George is as white can be. Second Pres is about as white congregation as it can be. But it was what I needed to get me through my last 15 years of ministry. At Second Pres, they have what is called the Edmond Lectures, where George and that congregation brings in Walter Brueggemann, Luke Timothy Johnson, Brian Blunt, on and on and on. I get to go to those lectures, but I also, because of my relationship with George, go to breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and here I have a close encounter with some of the greatest scholars that run across Christendom. That's what I needed. And the joy is I was very clear to George, I hope I was clear, how much I needed that. Anyone who knows George and I will discover that George and I don't talk every week. Our families don't go out to dinner. It's not like Miles and Wanda. It's none of that. But George and Second Prayers gives me that piece of sharpening that I needed over the last 15 or 20 years of my ministry. So with that, I preach at Second Prayers 2-3 times a year. They have what is called the Trent Symposium. I'm faculty in that symposium. It gives me a chance to use the skills, the mind that I just have to use in order to stay sane. I would go crazy if I cannot be engaged theologically and biblically, dealing with what are the issues in our community. Second Prayers and George afford me the opportunity to do those kind of things. And that relationship and that friendship has kept me sane over the last 15, 20 years. The most recent has been when the death of George Floyd. George called me the day of the death. It was a pastoral call. It is the only call I received from any clergy, white or black. And he was concerned if I was okay because of our relationship. And he talked about how saddened he was and what could we do. And we talked and ended up deciding to do a Facebook Live piece where George would moderate and I would talk about what that death did to Black America and talk about how we've been struggling with not being able to breathe for over 200 years in America. That piece ended up being viewed by over 2,000 people. They later showed it at the Montreat Retreat Center. I don't know how many people I have talked to in light of that, but my friendship with George has been one of a professional one. Though we are friends personally, it is more on the professional side where it helps me deal with my brain. It's just absolutely necessary for me, and I hope for all of you. So at the end of this, this is where I am with all of these friendships and the joys that I have. Marvin Sapp has a song entitled "Never Would Have Made It," and he repeats over and over again that he is wiser, stronger, better, much better. Bill Lee is wiser, I'm stronger, I'm better, much better because of the relationships that I have chosen to be part of over these 39 years of ministry. And I believe that even in retirement, the more I engage the right relationships and friendships, I will continue to grow wiser, stronger, better, so much better. God bless all of you today, and I look to see you real soon.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for those words. We will now prepare to hear responses from several of the individuals that you mentioned. We'll start with Reverend Dr. George Anderson, who is with us today. If he could come on camera for us. Thank you. Reverend Dr. George Anderson has been the senior minister of the Second Presbyterian Church in Roanoke, Virginia since 1998, having served churches in Tennessee and Mississippi. He has a degree from St. Andrews University in Laurinburg, North Carolina, and Union Presbyterian Seminary in Richmond. And since 2008, he has served as the co-director of the annual Katie Susan Trent Symposium for newly ordained ministers held at Second Presbyterian Church. And the symposium is also co-sponsored by Union Presbyterian Seminary. And Dr. Anderson is married to Millie, and they have three wonderful daughters. So thank you for being with us. And then also we have Miles and Wanda King. If they could come on camera for us, then they have been retired for 6 years and residents in Richmond, Virginia. They've been married for 32 years and have one son. They both graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University, and in their leisure time, they like to travel and spend time with family and friends. And we're thankful for their presence with us today. And both of these individuals happen, or couple and individual, happen to be friends of Reverend Dr. Lee. And he mentioned them. And so we wanted to bring them on just to talk a little bit about the importance of friendship. And so we'll start off with a response from Dr. Anderson. If you will come and share with us, and following Dr. Anderson, we'll hear from the King family, and then I'll come back and lead us in a time of Q&A.
Well, thank you. I got to tell you, it's a very unique and wonderful experience to hear a friend talk about a friendship in a public setting. And if every one of you could have that opportunity in your life just once, you'll be very fortunate. It was a very moving, important experience. I say that knowing that that's not the point, that there's a larger context here. And one of the reasons I think that Bill and I connect so well is that we both have a passion for fellow ministers, which has led to a real interest and support of each other. But we have both share a passion to really help other ministers. A lot of that for me came out of a midlife ministry crisis when I was getting bored, basically, and realized that I could get so much more out of ministry if I devoted the last half of my ministry helping other people's careers and not be so focused on advancing my own career. And Bill has been very much that way in my experience. I want to respond to Bill's and my friendship, but I want to give just a little bit of background to say why it was so important to me that I find him in my life. I have been a part of two groups of ministers that have met annually for over 2 decades, and one of them started in seminary, and we've been meeting ever since. And both groups started because of professional needs. I'm speaking to what Bill was speaking about earlier. It was a professional association. We wanted to work on our preaching. We wanted to work on best practices. We wanted to read good theology and discuss it. And we wanted to critique each other. And it was a huge help. And that's a lot of what he is encouraging. And it has sustained me in my ministry. And I've always sought that out. But I want to paint a contrast. There are those professional relationships, and then there is that peer support that goes so far beyond that. And those two often get confused, but I separate them. With those groups, we started with how we could help each other. We studied, we preached to each other, we read the books. But as the years passed on, some real kinship developed because we were kind of going through ministry together. And so as opposed to the Kings, there are friendships that I need that are outside my guild. But what I'm speaking to are those friendships that I need, that support and professional support I need within the guild, because there's only other ministers get you. People who are not in ordained ministry don't really understand what it's like to be in ministry. The same is true for doctors and teachers and everybody else. But ministers get what ministers go through. And that's why those minister professional associations have been very important. As the years went on, we had deaths, loved ones die, we had challenges in the church, we had conflict we had to deal with. One of our number went through a divorce, another one almost went through a divorce and got reconciled. We had illnesses, one had a stroke, challenges with staff members that were difficult. And we were there for each other as we went through this. And there developed this peer relationship that I think is incredibly important. That circle for me, I keep very small. I don't trust a lot of people to be in that small, you are now my friends, Jesus to his disciples group, because those are the ones I need to trust to have my back. And I don't want to share my life, my inner life with everybody, but I need to have that core group that I go to. And so we then became something deeper. I to go back to a passage that Bill Lee was talking about, Jesus was with his disciples for a long time. They went through a lot together. But when Jesus was facing his death at the end and needed them to come to an even greater commitment that was based on the relationship they had, he made clear, I'm no longer your master, no longer your mentor, no longer your professor. I call you now my friends. And that, having those few people in my life that reached that level, that's what sustained me over the years. So back to Bill. When I came to Roanoke, he seems to describe our relationship as if he sought me out because he was looking for an intellectual challenge. But I just need you to know that I don't remember it that way. I sought him out first. Bill, I sought Bill for reasons that I knew that I was going to need support from not everybody, but just a few other pastors that I could count on. I was new to Roanoke. Bill knew Roanoke really well. He's highly respected in the community. He has been a part of a lot of big decisions that have made, some of the biggest programs that have been started in the community to help with medical needs and other needs. He has been at the center of, and so I needed him for that reason. I was coming to a church that had only had 5 senior ministers since 1900. I didn't know how to, and I thought I might retire here myself, but I was 38 years old at the time. Bill was someone who had been at his church his entire ordained ministry. He could help me understand how I could navigate that. I needed perspective from outside of my congregation. Well, Bill was somebody that the people in my church that I most respected, the Fitzpatricks, and well, I won't go into names because you don't know them, but Bill knows who they are. The people I most respected him. So I was smart enough to look to where they would look and where they directed me. We have a huge medical community in our church. He could help our church expand our medical outreach. And then also, here's the main thing, he was willing. He was not somebody that dismissed me. He was somebody who took time from me. He was open to having this 38-year-old minister have conversations with him and reach out to him. Now, of course, all these other things happened that Bill was talking about and more, which allowed us to get to know each other better, but that was why I sought Bill out. So my point is that it wasn't 50-50 from my perspective, as I needed more from Bill than what necessarily that I could offer Bill. But along the way, again, this very professional association went beyond the level and became, as we got to know each other, became deeper, and Bill became somebody that I could trust, and I could share things with him that I couldn't share with others, that I wouldn't share with other ministers even in the community. And we could have some conversations on and share some plans on a much deeper level that wasn't possible elsewhere. Now I'll mention the fact that I did notice early in our relationship, I did happen to notice that Bill's Black. And like you said, I'm whiter than white. No doubt that was a factor in our relationship. I don't deny that. And that was another reason, because it's great to have a professional relationship with somebody that's of another race and comes from a different kind of experience to help. But what I'm telling you is that was not the leading factor between Bill and me. It was an important one, but it was not the leading factor at all. Our relationship was, I needed that relationship. I had others I could have turned to, but I needed that relationship for all those other reasons I needed. However, when the George Floyd killing happened, I had Bill to turn to. You know, when I saw the riots that broke out, the demonstrations in Roanoke and the nation and around the world, and there was something far bigger than other kind of police misconduct incidents that we saw, but this was something bigger and represented something more foundational and ground shaking for the entire community, but particularly for the African-American community. I had Bill to turn to then. And at that point, the blessing was the fact that he was of a different race and experience, and he could be a pastor to me. And then, as you heard, he then became a pastor of my church when we had this conversation where we could then talk about it. Then he became a pastor to the larger community that tuned in, and to the larger Presbyterian church, because it kind of went viral, went around the Presbyterian church and also around the world. The reason I point that out is that I think he developed professional relationships for expected results. That's why you have professional relationships that he's talking about. I want to become a better preacher. I want to learn best practices. I want to share with me what's going on in your church. I'll share with you what's going on in my church. The reason you develop those peer relationships is for the unexpected results. It's for when there's trouble in your marriage and you don't know how to navigate that, you don't know who to talk to, or there's a real crisis within the church, or there's something with George Floyd that's happened nationally, but on a very personal level, you need to come to some kind of grips with it and get some kind of understanding and find somebody that you can kind of navigate that with you. The peer relationships are for the living of life. You know, it's to have people have your back that you can turn to when things happen that you did not plan. My point is that those peer relationships within ministry grow out of really good professional relationships, and the one precedes the other. I'm going to stay within my time. I think I got 2 more minutes. I did a sabbatical on what really nurtures new ministers. And I did a lot of interview, a lot of studied a lot of programs. And I found out the number one complaint that new ministers had were these artificial groups that they were put into, where they expected to be instant friends and peers with other ministers. And they're to kind of shoot the breeze and, you know, and be a support for each other. And many of them had the same kind of initial experience that Bill had with the group that he talked about. But then when I talked to those who are in these intentional programs where they read together and studied together, and they had to share practices, things like residencies, these groups where ministers supervised several younger ministers together. The residencies I'm referring to was a 2-year program where they had mentors and coaches and assigned reading, and then they had to do liturgy, they had to do work together. Their residencies in church. When I asked them what was the most important factor, what was the most important thing to you, they did not say the coaches, the mentors, the readings, the working together. They said it was my peers, my friends. The irony is, though, that peer friendship grew out of that professional relationship that they then had, where then intimacy developed, trust developed, and where they could count on each other and have each other's backs. Bill, until a minister that went through the Trent Symposium moved here, I don't want to overstate this, but my circle for a while was just Bill. Just the ones that I could really trust. Not even of my associates. I have associates I'm very close to now, but I have to have somebody I can talk to. And even though we didn't talk often, Bill was about the only one that was there that I could let down the professional guard while still being a minister, and have that connection where someone who could really understand where I was coming from. And Bill, I'm deeply grateful. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is my lovely wife, Wanda. Friends, one thing about friends, we all have a lot of friends, but we have very few friends that we develop real lifelong relationships. Quick story, our relationship started back in '93 when we relocated to Roanoke. Keep in mind, this is our first relocation. Just had been married for 3 years. Got an 18-month-old son. Don't know anybody in Roanoke, no relatives. So obviously we did not have any wind in our sails. I can tell you that much. But as we were looking at churches and visiting churches, we came upon Loudon Avenue Christian Church. Unbeknownst to us, that as we were attending church, Bill was not only the pastor, he was a Sunday school teacher. And I may add that he was an excellent teacher and nurturer. So as we talk about friends and our relationship that we have, the King family and the Lee family, because that's the way that I look at it, them as family, is that they opened their heart to us as we came to Roanoke, so much so that they all participated in the nurturing and the raising of our son. And likewise, they allowed us to be a part of the lives of their daughter and son as well. So it's been a great relationship. And just a couple of characteristics that we look for as a family in relationships. We look for a confidant. We look for someone that we can talk to openly, and they don't judge us for anybody who we are, but who we are, and we are who we are. Uh, Good listeners, because you have to be a good listener. You can't always talk. So sometimes you have to be good listener, but most importantly, you have to state the obvious. So you have to say what the truth is, no matter how it hurts. And everybody can't accept that. So my motto is, if you don't want to know the truth, then you probably don't want to ask me, because I'm going to give you what I'm thinking. And that's what has made our relationship as a family so special. Now, Bill said in the beginning that everybody that he has is old, but I want you to know that I'm younger than Bill, of his other friends that he had. But we love the Lee family, and our relationship will last forever. That's why we enjoy ourselves, because we can be who we are, and we don't have to be anybody else. So thank you.
Thank you all for your engagement and your responses. It was a number of nuggets that we have. There's a few questions, and those that are watching with us, please drop your questions in the chat box, or in the Q&A box, excuse me, in the Q&A box, so that we can ask those questions for the few remaining minutes that we have. I'll start with this question that's posed to Dr. Lee and the King family. What would you say are some things that help you move from the pastor-parishioner relationship into friendship that you have today?
You going first, Bill?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
When we were looking for churches in Rome, this is a question that I asked my wife the other day. Prior to us joining, once we started attending Sunday school, Bill asked if he could come visit us at our home. So keep in mind, I haven't had any pastors to come ask me to come visit our home. But upon his visit, he came and he was down to earth, dressed in jeans, bought food, sitting on the floor, played with our son, who was 18 months old then. I knew then that he could be our pastor if we needed it, but he could also be somebody that personally was there for us for whatever we needed. He was genuine.
Yeah. And Michael, and so it works both ways. Wanda and Mal were just genuine folk. It was easy. I visited every new person who came, who visited. That was my thing. Up close person goes to see them. To go to their house, it was like going home. To the extent, Wanda's parents were still living, you would think that they are my extended family. It just was natural. It's just the strangest thing, natural. And the conversations permitted us to just flow. It just happened easily. So I don't know who's asking that question. It wasn't hard work. It was really fluid. You know how you just meet persons in life where the heartbeat is just the same. The rhythm is the same. So that's what happened with us. And I need to say this. My wife, I was hoping to get her to stand behind me. She is always a barometer for me for relationships. And she said, they're real people. They my folks. So yeah.
That the point that you just made about natural gets to what Dr. Anderson was saying about the unexpected surprises that occur in relationships. Could you say, Dr. Anderson, just you and Bill, what would argue was an unexpected surprise that you could reflect on between the peer relationship between colleagues, the unexpected surprise relationship?
Unexpected. What I think that I say the most obvious one was I never saw the George Floyd coming, and then I just needed somebody to turn to. Another one would be the pandemic. I don't think any of us really understood. Nobody taught us in seminary how to be a minister and how to lead a church during the pandemic. And so it's not something that we were prepared for. So everybody has to figure it out together and call each other and say, what are you doing? What am I doing? How do we stay connected as a church? How do we continue to do what we do? Another maybe unexpected is that Bill has become someone the Presbyterian Church looks to some degree to come speak and to offer his wisdom. And I didn't get to know him in order to find places for him to speak or to get him at Montreat. I did need him to speak at Second Presbyterian Church. And then with the symposium, I didn't see that one coming either. That developed after we got to know each other. But once we developed the symposium for ministers, then because of my existing relationship with Bill, we could have everybody that teaches in that, most everybody is local. Or well, they're as a professor and another minister that comes from different contexts, but everybody else is local. And so I would never have found Bill through a resume or by going online or by asking around. I found Bill because I already found Bill, if that makes sense. And then these ministers who come to this, they realize when the seminars are being presented, they see played out in front of them relationships that already exist. And the underlying message is you got to build up that community for yourself. They see that in play. We don't bring in outsiders locally that don't have a relationship with each other. We see people who already have worked together and already care about each other. Even though we're presenting content, they see that underneath it, though, is the relationships that have that are sustaining. Yeah. I hope that answers, but I'll let Bill speak.
Yeah. And Michael, the unintended, there's several. I was trying to figure out how to do a capital campaign in the context of our church. I'd done one, it went okay. But I talked with George. He was going through a capital campaign, and George gives me information. I don't know whether other pastors would give other pastors much information he gives me. So he was talking about this silent campaign. I said, what in the heck is a silent campaign? And they said, we're going to go public. So I sat with George. I said, you mean you're going to ask the entire Roanoke Valley to help y'all raise money? He said, no. Silent campaign, going to key members of the congregation, getting their commitment first. Going public was to the church. I said, wow. So that became something. My last campaign was the way we did it at Loudon Avenue. Loudon has a Lenten celebration starting Ash Wednesday, go to Holy Week every year. I borrowed that from George. The beauty is the one that we have is 10 times as large as Second Prayers. George preached in that Lenten celebration. He preached so hard. It was a new experience for this Presbyterian preacher. They told me he had to go home and take a nap. There was so much energy. But the people said, that man can preach. It's those kinds of gifts. You can't plan them. They just happen.
I have one last question for you, Pastor Lee, before we leave our time today. There's two questions, one around building relationships within your congregation. Do you find that you're accused of showing any form of favoritism, or you're hurting folks' feelings as a result of this? And I know this may have come up in your own ministry, and so I want to give you an opportunity to address that.
Oh yeah, so the reason why I use the biblical basis to establish this, Jesus had friends, and within his friends, he had a closer group of people. So this was something I would say publicly from the pulpit. I want people to understand that I had friends, and all of us were not in the same place. So that was okay. I had to live with that. The other end of that would be I would have lost this wonderful relationship if I didn't risk some folk being being upset. Michael, let me just put it real clear. After church on Sundays, we would go out to eat. And so I had to get to a place where I invite everybody. So all y'all can come. But there's a certain group of us. We're going to go eat. And Miles and Wanda. And many times we went to each other's houses because we could just relax and just be cool. So, yeah, you're going to run the risk of people being upset. But every person who would confront me, I would say to them, have I done anything to say you couldn't be my friend? And if we are, the relationship is different. No two relationships are going to be the same. And some folk cannot be my friend. And I need to just be straight with them about that. So yeah. It's risky, but I think the benefit outweighs the risk in my case. Now, let me just be very clear. I have had other relationships in the church that I call friends, but they don't go to where Miles and Wanda and I are. It's just I don't have to worry that I can't be Miles and Wanda's pastor and be their friend too. Others I have that struggle with that for some reason there's a bifurcation. I can only go so far. With Miles and Wanda, no issue. So for those who are listening, I'm going home Friday. We're going to see Miles and Wanda one way or another. Either we're going to stop by their house or we're going to get together because that's just what we do. I can't go through Richmond and not hang out with the Kings. It's just where it is. And the whole world knows that. So that's no secret. It's no secret.
Thank you for that honesty and also just the clarity of naming that in this work, this line of work, there's need for friendship.
I didn't hear that, Michael.
Oh, I said thank you for your. Can you hear me? You all can hear me. I think I might have lost Bill, but
Okay, I got you now.
Yeah. Okay. All I said was thank you for your honesty and your transparency to name that there's a need for friendship and that you can find friendship within the congregation and be honest with the congregation about that. I think sometimes we skirt away from that honesty for fear of retribution. But what I'm hearing is that honesty is liberating in ways that helps not only your nourishment, but also the nourishment of the King family and others within the congregation who may be looking for that as well. So thank you for sharing. We are at our time today. I want to thank you all for your time and the wisdom and the honesty and the stories that you shared. I take value in the stories. The stories bring the topic to light, to be able to see friendship at work. So thank you again. And for all those that are with us, we will see you next month for our next series session on scriptural imagination. We will be hearing from Professor Ellen Davis next month. Please join us, and you all have a blessed and wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank all of you.
Thank you.